Hello, I'm Don Santa, the board chair of the Arundel Rivers Federation. We're pleased that so many of you could join us this evening for the unveiling of our new State of the Rivers report card. Before that, however, I'd like to express our thanks to the Half Shell Committee that have made this evening possible. Thank you Leanne Candon, Dana Cole, Linda Elkington, Elaine Force McKellar, Mary Kafori, and Lynn Odell for all of your work on this event. Before I turn things over to Denise, I want to encourage all of you to visit the Half Shell website for our auction. The proceeds from the auction make it possible for the Federation to do its work to protect and restore the Southwest and Rhode Rivers. And so now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Denise Swalt, to whom we owe so much thanks for her work over the past year under challenging circumstances.
Hello, I'm Denise Swalt, the Executive Director for the Arundel Rivers Federation. As I head into my second full year as Executive Director, I am very excited about all of our plans for 2021. 2020 was a challenging year for the Federation, but we persevered. One of our most innovative projects is the Annapolis Landing Project that uses the beaver log jam method. I am so excited for everyone to come see it upon completion later this year. Jesse Iliff, our riverkeeper for the South, West, and Rhode Rivers, has been working hard to increase enforcement with the county. One of our major focuses for 2021 is to expand our restoration program into agriculture in South County. We would love to hear from any landowners who could help us with this endeavor. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has supported us through these challenging times and as we move forward. I would especially like to thank my awesome staff, Jesse, Nancy, Taylor, Jennifer, and Chloe. I could not do what I do without you. I also want to extend another round of thanks to the terrific, wonderful, amazing, I will run out of adjectives, volunteers and supporters of the Federation. I value your input and all of the support that you give us each and every day.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us tonight for our virtual Half Shell event. Our mission at the Arundel Rivers Federation is to preserve, protect, and restore the Southwest and Rhode Rivers. We work with our local communities to achieve clean, fishable, swimmable waterways for present and future generations. We fix rivers and clean water by getting our boots muddy. We install restoration projects that filter stormwater pollution, reduce erosion, and absorb excess nutrients. We fight for stronger environmental laws to make our rivers safe for swimming and boating and protect our natural resources and the marine life that depend on them. We closely monitor the health of our rivers, gathering data on over 40 sites throughout the watersheds so that we can be strategic about our restoration projects and let the communities we serve know how the water is doing in the rivers that they use. We hope you'll support us tonight through our Fund a Need page by going to arundelrivers.org and clicking on our Half Shell event. There are several giving levels that support the essential needs of the Federation. A $5,000 gift would fund an intern for the entire summer to help inspire the next generation of conservation professionals. Please take a minute to listen to our intern from last summer, John Leathers, describing his experience.
Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in to the Arundel Rivers Federation Half Shell event. My name is Jonathan Leathers. I'm a senior at University of Maryland studying environmental science and technology. And last summer I had the honor and privilege of working as the Federation's Watershed Restoration Intern. And this is a very diverse internship opportunity that I enjoyed. We offer the opportunity to work with land-based BMP solutions, such as rain gardens, as well as stream restoration projects. We also conduct fish sampling and macroinvertebrate sampling for post-restoration monitoring success. And also another key aspect was working on living shorelines such as Glebe Bay to understand their role in improving our ecosystem. And last but certainly not least was my favorite activity, which was data collection and water quality monitoring on the rivers themselves. It's great to be out on the water. And what this internship really gives you the opportunity to learn and take away from is understanding that the watershed operates as a unit. Getting to see it and understand it from the land all the way out to the water where it meets the bay, you understand that this entire system is in need of help to function as it was intended to. And that is our job to be restoring it. And I hope that in the future that there are the same opportunities available and as well as funding available for future interns to be as inspired by this position as I was. So in the meantime, I hope that you can get out, get your boots muddy, get our rivers clean. Thank you very much for listening.
The work of our interns is vital to our success, and with your support, we could get another great addition to our team like John for the summer. A gift of $2,000 would be enough to fund the trees, shrubs, and plants for an entire restoration site. Our restoration projects are incredible. The thousands of native plants and trees that go into these projects provide habitat and food for animals year-round. We choose a mix of native plants, making sure they have berries and nuts, and for a variety of songbirds and small mammals and other wildlife to depend on. We also choose pollinator-friendly plants to support bees and butterflies and other pollinators in our watersheds. But you don't have to be a millionaire to help us. Even small gifts can make a big difference. $100 would buy a pair of waders that can help us with our non-tidal stream monitoring and fish monitoring. It's been a tough year for the Federation. Traditionally, this half-shell event in person would deliver over 25% of our annual funding. I wish that we could all be together celebrating with oysters and drinks like we have in years past, but the Arundel Rivers Federation really needs your support, and we appreciate you tuning in to our virtual auction. Even if you don't usually give online, we're asking you to make an exception this year and help us out through these really challenging times. Thank you so much for coming and seeing us here in virtual land. And now I'd like to hand it off to Denise Swoll, our Executive Director, and Nancy Merrill Sullivan, our Outreach Manager, to give the 2020 Volunteer of the Year Award to Rich Kuhlman, who retired from a long career at Environmental Protection Agency and now shares his valuable time with us captaining the South Riverkeeper boat during the monitoring season.
So here we are with Rich Kuhlman, who is going to receive our Volunteer of the Year Award. Rich stepped up this past summer and skippered one of our monitoring boats for us on the South River. He needed to learn 18 different locations along the South River and was out in the heat and the rain about 5 hours a day every week of the summer. So we really appreciate him stepping up and helping us out. And now we have an award for him for all your hours of service.
Thank you, Denise. Oh, nice. It's a bosun's whistle.
Awesome.
That's a little tangled up here. I'm gonna have to figure out how to blow one of these. Thank you very much. I appreciate the recognition.
Rich, why did you provide so many hours of volunteering to the Federation?
For me, volunteering for the Federation is pretty much a no-brainer. I've worked in the environment for my entire career. I'm now retired. I hunt, I fish, I oyster, I crab here in the South River and in the Chesapeake Bay. Giving back is very important. I especially enjoyed working with the interns. It keeps me grounded. It helps me better understand what's going on with people in their 20s, what they see is important, and how they think they can help with the future. I want to thank you guys because I thoroughly enjoyed doing this. I look forward to doing it again this summer. I guess we start up in April.
Yes.
And I'll be there again. I enjoy it.
The interns really loved working with you.
They're smart. They're
Yes.
smart. They're good people. Up next is Jesse Iliff. He's going to be giving us a window into the monitoring results that I and the interns helped collect for the Southwest and Rhode Rivers. And here's to a great 2021.
Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, where weekly monitoring for 5 months culminates in our 2020 report card scores. Bottom line is, things were solid, not great, but not terrible in all 3 rivers. We had a C+ in the south, a C in the Rhode River, and a C in the west. Now, what goes into that? Going from the top, we have bottom pH, which was solid across the board with A+ in the south and the Rhode and an A in the West River. Although the scores actually all went down from 2019. And part of the reason for that was early spring algal blooms, which tend to drive up pH levels and outside of acceptable ranges. Bacteria were also solid. We had A's across the board, slightly worsened scores in the south, a little bit better in the Rhode and a little bit worse in the west. Part of the picture for the Rhode River is changed community participation in our Operation Clearwater program, which samples bacteria during the summer at swimming beaches. The pandemic changed some of the community participation, and so we didn't go to all the same stops in the Rhode River as we had in 2019. Dissolved oxygen was also fairly solid, a B- in the south, B+ in the Rhode, and a B in the West River, although all 3 rivers saw their scores go down in 2020 compared to 2019. Bottom temperature was an interesting story in 2020. The temperature readings increased or improved in the South River, but got worse in the Rhode and the West River. We'll talk a little bit more about why we believe that is in a second. Water clarity, not too great. Across the board, we've got a D+ in the South River, a D in the Rhode, and a D- in the West River. Although the clarity levels did improve a little bit from 2019 in the South and the Rhode Rivers. And underwater grasses is the sad story of 2020. There was a decrease in the acreage on the South River, and 2.5 acres of widgeon grass that existed in the Rhode River disappeared entirely. The West River didn't have any in 2019 and didn't have any again in 2020. Now, I don't want people to be too terribly alarmed about the widgeon grass leaving from the Rhode River. Widgeon grass is a notoriously boom and bust species of underwater grasses, and so we're holding out hope that it will come back, and it tends to come and go from year to year, so that hope is a fairly sound one. Again, C+ in the South River, a little bit down from 2019. The Rhode River held steady with a C, and the West River got a little bit worse, but still resulted in a C grade. Part of these scores are a little bit artificially depressed because we got started monitoring later in the season when water is warmer and water quality tends to go down. Now, the reason for the pollution in our rivers and creeks is driven by precipitation. And this graph shows that as precipitation goes up, water clarity tends to go down. Clarity is influenced most by suspended sediments, mostly just dirt, our #1 pollutant in all 3 rivers by volume and by impact. And so when the rain falls hardest, it washes the most into our streams and creeks and drives water clarity down. You see that large bar of precipitation in August and the orange line for clarity going down, but then as the rain tapered off in September and October, water clarity started to tick back up. This graph shows all of our monitoring stations throughout the 3 rivers. And we always want to keep an eye on where our hot spots of pollution are, where water pollution is worse, and also celebrate where it's best. Unfortunately, the worst stations, 4 out of 5 were in the West River, as you can see on the lower part of the slide. Also, as far upstream as we go in the South River is our main stem 5 station. also saw pretty poor water quality overall. But towards the mouths of the rivers, things improve a great deal. And as you see on the South River, our main stem 1 and main stem 1A stations had very solid water quality, as did the stations off of Camp Wabana in the Rhode River and in the West River float-free channel. An important and surprising creek that improved a lot in 2020 was Crab Creek, up towards the middle of the South River on the Annapolis Neck. We get these scores by averaging bottom temperature, bottom pH, and dissolved oxygen and water clarity over the course of our 20-week monitoring season. As I mentioned earlier, all 3 rivers had a decrease of dissolved oxygen at the bottom of the water column. And that is an important phenomenon because it causes what we call the hypoxic squeeze, where bottom dissolved oxygen levels are so low that fish can't breathe and they become stressed, which drives them towards the top of the water. But unfortunately, the surface temperatures at the top of the water column in summer tend to be higher than fish are able to be in comfortably. And so it causes this sort of squeeze where they need to find that sweet spot in the middle where there's enough dissolved oxygen to breathe, but it's not so hot that they get stressed. The South River, unfortunately, had a persistent dead zone throughout most of the summer. And that is shown here on this slide, where you can see the dissolved oxygen average levels in the South River over the course of the monitoring season. Under 3 milligrams per liter of dissolved oxygen is a stressful situation for fish, and they can't survive there for very long. That unfortunately persisted from the beginning of June all the way through the beginning of September in the South River, meaning that the bottom part of the water column in the river was not hospitable for fish for most of our monitoring season. So there was a dead zone in the South River for most of our monitoring season. And this is at odds with overall bay improvement. Over the course of the fall, we saw from the Chesapeake Bay program that the bay overall had its smallest dead zone in many years. Unfortunately, that did not extend into the smaller tributaries of the South, West, and Rhode Rivers, where we saw dissolved oxygen levels overall decreased from 2019 to 2020. It's just another bit of evidence that pollution and water quality are localized issues and require localized solutions. Bottom temperature is important, again, because warm water doesn't hold as much dissolved oxygen as cooler water does. And so the interplay between water temperature and dissolved oxygen plays out a lot in the water column from top to bottom. And warmer bottom water means less dissolved oxygen and exacerbates the hypoxic squeeze phenomenon I just described. You would think that being so close geographically, the South, the West, and the Rhode Rivers would have very similar temperatures overall. And they do have very similar surface water temperatures, but the bottom water temperatures changed a lot. And part of the reason for that is that the West and Rhode Rivers are both fairly shallow, with average depths between 5 and 6 feet. The South River, by contrast, is much deeper, which allows some insulation from hot air temperatures as the deeper water can retain its cooler temperature over time. This bar graph shows that the West River was a great deal warmer than the South and the Rhode. Unfortunately, out of all the 43 stations we monitor, the worst 9 for bottom temperature were all in the West River. The West River also suffered with water clarity. The late season water clarity readings in the West River didn't pick up the way that they did in the South and the Rhode Rivers. Generally, towards the end of the season, when temperatures start to cool off, algal activity starts to become diminished and water clarity improves. But as you can see on this graph, we didn't see that over the course of the monitoring season in 2020 for the West River. There are The two rivers on top, the south and the road, are those tan and orangish colors, and the west is the red. Now, unfortunately, for most of the season, the 1 meter clarity goal wasn't attained anywhere. But as you can see, towards the end of the season, the road and the south rivers started to improve their clarity a lot, but the west continued to struggle and generally didn't see any water clarity readings greater than 7/10 of a meter over the course of the entire season. So we need to figure out how to get a handle on the clarity problems and the total suspended sediment pollution in the West River if we're going to be able to bring that clarity score up. Oh, and I almost forgot, if any of you would like to learn more about any of the data we presented here tonight, please join us for our deep dive into the data on April 8th at 5:30. Thank you so much for tuning in for our report card presentation and for joining us for our annual auction. The auction ends tomorrow, so don't forget to get your final bids in. There's still time to support us. Head on over to our new website at arundelrivers.org and check on the half shell event and bid on all of your favorite items. Thanks again. This is your Riverkeeper, Jesse Iliff, signing off. I hope to see you out on the river this year.